the word slave originates from Slav. It was women first targeted for subjugation by men. Women have been in a fierce historical battle for equality for centuries. The original Holy Trinity was the family: mother, father, child. Before the First Council of Nicaea in 325 BC, when Constantine removed the woman from the Godhead and installed a male chauvinist supremacist structure: Father, Son, Holy Ghost. We also know that war is not only waged with bullets, napalm, and drones, but sexism, racism, religious intolerance, and the denial of fundamental human rights are equally deadly acts of war. The denial of essential social services for human beings is an act of war. To deny human beings fundamental human rights, such as the right to clean and affordable water, decent housing, a fair wage, access to transportation, quality education, the right to have cultural self-determination, the right to speak and learn in one's mother tongue, access for the physically challenged, affordable sources of healthy food and sources of energy, the right for women to have agency over their bodies is war. This is why we, as cultural workers, must continue to fight against injustice. This is why we must wage war on poverty and corporate greed, war on hate to achieve freedom, which is a prerequisite for peace. This is the irony. Our ultimate goal is peace and freedom, to have no war anywhere. But as artists, through our work, we must fight against injustice. We must fight for freedom and harmony to arrive at peace. Artists require resources to meet our basic needs. Artists require freedom to create without any restrictions. The very essence of an artist is freedom. Without freedom, there can be no peace. So we say, in the broadest sense, no war anywhere. Leo Tolstoy, the Russian writer regarded as one of the greatest authors of our time, stated, "The task of art is enormous. Art should cause violence to be set aside, and it's only art that can accomplish this," end quote. This is how the concept of colors came into being. Its seeds are seeds of healing. Healing is a prerequisite for peace. The emergence of concept of colors was a delayed response to the injustice that exploded during the Detroit Rebellion, the largest rebellion of the 1960s. We cannot forget the slaying of the 4-year-old Tanya Blanning, shot through a window by a National Guard, or the triple teenage murders of black youth by Detroit police at the Algiers Motel. Injustice raised its ugly head again on June 23, 1982, when anti-Asian racists murdered Vincent Chin. And on November 5, 1992, 30 years ago, the equally sinister and brutal beating of Malice Green by 2 racist Detroit police occurred. This is the backdrop that the concept of colors was responding to, and continuing to respond to, and continues to respond to in this climate of Trumpian-inspired hate, exemplified in the George Floyd public lynching. The Concert of Colors is the coming together of Detroit-based national and global artists and over 20 of Detroit's leading cultural institutions and supportive sponsors and individual donors to advocate for peace through the healing balm of cultural arts, where different languages dissipate and the emergence of the oneness through the feeling of the human spirit predominates throughout metropolitan Detroit. This is an excellent example of artists advocating for peace in this warring climate. Today, July 18th, is a date of global historical importance. On one hand, we celebrate the 102nd birthday of Nelson Mandela, born on this date in 1918. He was imprisoned for 27.5 years as a political prisoner. He became the first non-white head of state in South African history. He was the first president to dismantle the apartheid system and introduce multiracial democracy. President Mandela was also the oldest head of state in South African history, taking office at age 75 in 1992, the year Concert of Colors was born. Mandela said, "It is easy to break down and destroy. The heroes are those who make peace and build. Peace is not just the absence of conflict. Peace is the creation of an environment where all can flourish regardless of race, color, creed, religion, gender, class, caste, or any other social markers of difference. Religion, ethnicity, language, and social and cultural practices are elements that enrich human civilization, adding to the wealth of our diversity. Why should they be allowed to become a cause of division and violence? We demean our common humanity by allowing that to happen," end quote. Mandela sought to heal his nation through racial and political unification, even though the U.S. government had Nelson Mandela on its terrorist list until 2008. Some may wonder why Mandela was on the U.S. terrorist watch list. Mandela moved from nonviolent direct action to low-level guerrilla war in response to the Sharpeville massacre of March 21, 1960, in the black township of Sharpeville, South Africa. While South African police fired into a crowd of black people, killing and wounding some 250 of them. It was the first and most violent demonstration against apartheid in South Africa. The Pan-African Congress, a splinter group of the African National Congress, the ANC, created in 1959, organized countrywide demonstrations on March 21, 1960, for the abolition of South Africa's pass laws. Participants were instructed to surrender their passes and invite arrests. Some 20,000 blacks gathered near a police station at Sharpeville, about 30 miles south of Johannesburg. After some demonstrators provoked by police began stoning police armored cars, the police opened fire on them with submachine guns. About 69 blacks were killed, more than 180 wounded, including 50 women and children. A state of emergency was declared in South Africa. More than 11,000 people were detained, and the PNC and ANC were outlawed. Reports of the incident helped focus international criticism on South Africa's apartheid policy. The ANC went underground, and Mandela became the head of its military wing, the spear of the nation. In 1964, he was convicted of sabotage and treason and imprisoned until 1990. Defending the shift in strategy as a last resort, Mandela said in one of his interviews from prison, "The armed struggle was forced on us by the government," end quote. Following dismantling apartheid, South African President Nelson Mandela chose Sharpeville as the site to sign the country's new constitution into law. And while we reflect on Mandela's words and the Arab American National Museum's anti-oppression statement, we also realize that today, July 18th, is the 95th anniversary of the publication of the volume of Mein Kampf, Hitler's autobiographical political manifesto that became the Bible of Nazism, Pure Hate, that was published in 1925. The fact that Mein Kampf means my battle or my struggle is of significance. Degenerates like Hitler, who suffered from internal chaos, internal battles, internal struggles, only unleashed their internal war onto others, from their psychic onto the world. Often they have suffered childhood traumas due to the lack of love and care. Hitler's ideology of hate eclipsed his childhood trauma. Their internal splitting causes them to create an illusion of the other falsely. This is how hatred evolves. Peace is rooted in harmony, oneness, and bringing all things together. To change the world, we must first change ourselves. Internal peace must be achieved through meditative practice, whether through prayer, mindfulness, solitude, focusing on inner beauty of nature, quiet walks, reading, or creating art in its various forms. This inner peace can be achieved over time with dedicated practice. This inner transformation of calming our internal waters allows the smooth, quiet surface of our being to mirror the light. No reflections are possible in turbulent waters. Peace requires honesty. It requires courage to tell the truth, even when it hurts. From what fertile soil does the concert of colors spring? I want to share with you 3 poems. The first poem is inspired by Aliyah Hassan, the grandmother of Ishmael Ahmed and the matriarch of Access, which stands for Arab Community Center for Economic and Social Services, the most important social service organization in the United States focused on the needs of Arab Americans. Her life was a cry for freedom, an effort to escape the narrow confines of externally imposed definition of what an Arab woman should be. She defined herself. All true artists do. Her everlasting spirit is still present with us today. This poem is entitled Access, Open the Doors, a tribute to Hajj Aliyah Agi Hassan. Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. The winds from Syria gently blew in her hair. An Egyptian spring rumbled across the dry Sioux prairies, and stolen indigenous land sacred. Arabian nights found Aliyah tucked warmly under buffalo blankets as the tom-tom beats of native drums and the oud combed gently through the air in all 4 directions, beckoning ancient spirits, while turquoise and red beaded necklaces dangled and swung, and abayas danced in the hot breeze of the red, white, and blue multi-ethnic parade that Iryna witnessed at age 6. Access, open the doors, open the doors. Iryna was born April 30th, 1910 in Kadoka, South Dakota, a spiritual battleground northeast of Pine Ridge, southwest of Cheyenne River and Standing Rock, northwest of Rosebud and west of Creek, and southeast of northern Cheyenne, all now with tiers of rivers, sadly Native American reservations, American genocidal prisons, lands stolen. When Iryna transported from Sioux Falls to Detroit in 1925, the year Robert Franklin Williams, Frantz Fanon, Patrice Lumumba, and Malcolm X were born, 25 years later she moved to New York City, that skyscraper city where she earned a private investigator's license, working in retail security as a detective and a civil defense director of Brooklyn's 82nd Precinct, and would hide Malcolm X, keep him safe for a while, a builder of international bridges for her people that would later gather and struggle on Dearborn's South End. With her husband, they protested at the UN against Britain's refusal to remove troops from the Suez Canal. Their demands shouted, thundered, end the occupation of Egypt and Sudan, end the occupation of Egypt and Sudan. They co-founded the Egyptian Arab American Seamen's Society and built a permanent room in the hearts of labor rights and the religious needs of Eastern Muslims. Access, open the doors, open the doors. Iryna broke the long-weighted, ancient, rusted chains of conceived notions of what it means to be a woman, equal to men. In Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, Egypt, Palestine, Sudan, Tanzania, Somalia, Brazil, Manhattan, Dearborn, Detroit. We are all equal as one in the human family. Chickpeas crushed, olive oil, sesame paste with water and lemon, seasoned cumin and crushed fava beans with tabbouleh and tomato and warm pita bread and sweet mint tea. Beautiful calligraphy dancing across parchment from right to left, open, expands the American landscape view of freedom to be a more perfect union. Access, open the doors, open the doors. Iryna, poet, researcher, writer, caregiver, activist of immense stature, referenced spiritual scholar, a boundless griot of self-determination, equality, and freedom. Who opened the earth with ideas of righteousness? And with the seismic power of feminism, Nasser reached out to touch her stately hand. She protected Malcolm, I said, opened the doors to Mecca, encircling the black stone, helped Malcolm become El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz, transitioning him to the true Ahmad Jamal path, away from the NOI, FBI, alhamdulillah, to egalitarian Islam, where all humanity is embraced. She secured him, protected him for a while, lovingly. Iryna's deeply caring hands extended into other worlds, where she taught others how to cleanse the body at death properly, how to use water with camphor and lotus leaves and sandalwood paste in preparation for the white shrouding, the funeral prayer. Hajj, Aliyah, Agdi, Hassan, freedom fighter, the mother of access, the mother of open doors, the grandmother of Ishmael Ahmed, an institution builder, an earth mother. She fed the hungry and provided housing and translation classes, the embodiment of humanist activism, the capstone, the keystone, the cornerstone of truth upon which we now stand forever solid. Access, doors opened, doors open. Alhamdulillah, all praises to God. Alhamdulillah, all praises to God. The second poem is a tribute to the humble Ishmael Ahmed, who co-founded the Arab American Center for Economic and Social Services Access. He was appointed executive director in 1983 and was responsible for the overall operations of the organization, as well as the executive administration of the Arab American National Museum, and is the founder and executive director of the Council of Colors, and was recently appointed by President Biden as a member of the National Council of Arts. He's also a dear and special friend. I'm also a pencil artist, a portrait pencil artist. Here are some samples of some of my previous work. I recently drew this picture of Ish and his fantastic wife, Margaret. The poem is entitled Ish, Life Lessons, the teaching example of Ishmael Ahmed. The earth is like a small cell in the universe, tiny and circular, spinning 360 on a 23-degree axis like a top, spinning like a top, hoping it doesn't stop. An island Earth floating in the sky of constellations held together by order, a contained, inner-working, unified ecosystem threatened by cold and red hands of greed and selfishness. Ish reminds us change comes from the bottom up. No one can do it alone. It takes a community. The individual drop of water disappears into the ocean and gains its strength and power of motion. Who is Ish but a wish, manifest, humble, magnified friend? Ish is a home builder for the heart, an institution builder for the soul, a builder of community where invisible tones of music reverberate and connects hearts in a healing dance of unity, centering us in a place where we all are the same. Hue, many, harmony, a concert of colors, all of us. And my last poem is entitled The 2022 Concert of Colors, Ode to Audre Lorde's The Black Unicorn. How rare is a shiny blue blackness in form, escaping to freedom, ungodly caged, transposed from colorless mythologies in its being as real as it is accurate, really symbolic, a concert of colors, flying or running with dancing wings through tall skyward cylinders of treed woods, dense green, smells of brown hardened earth growing wet under the split hooves of impatient kaleidoscopic tonality, concerted colors, greedy dark purple shadows transformed into freely giving ancient symbols flung across the starved sky, even warming cold-clouded, war-torn countries where misty mockeries rise and are painted fire-baked in the fury of skin and fur, laps holding deep horn hardness, softened by moon grooves, lit lightning growing, restless, running, relentless, unfree on the ground until it races ahead, miles ahead, and takes its mighty flight. The black unicorn rises, wings harmoniously outstretched, nostrils flaring, as its entire being disappears into the night, a night of colored concerts, of twinkling lights. We are all artists, and as such, abhor authoritative demands. No artist wants to be told what to write. The great South African revolutionary Steve Biko entitled his book, "I Write What I Like." Can you imagine telling John Coltrane how to play the saxophone? Or for that matter, any developed musician? Malcolm? No. Can you imagine telling our great poets what words to write? No. Or any painter what colors to choose? No. Freedom is the essence of art. Freedom is the essential requirement for peace. Freedom and peace are requirements for love. Love, the opposite of war. Love is harmony. Love is music. We must remove the chains, other medieval entrapments, the monetary barriers, as the concept colors have done, maintaining free and accessible programs. Art is about feelings and increasing sensitivity in the human dimension, not about corporate greed. Fighting against injustice is winning. I want to close by reciting the words of Haile Selassie, the last emperor of Ethiopia from 1930 to 1974, with lineage tracing back to King Solomon and Queen Sheba, and the Jewish emperor of Ethiopia, Menelik I, which were popularized by the legendary Bob Marley in his song called War. Until the philosophy which holds one race superior to another, inferior, is finally and permanently discredited and abandoned, well, everywhere is war. Me say war. Until there's no longer first-class or second-class citizens of any nation. Until the color of a man's skin is of no more significance than the color of his eyes. I gotta say war, yeah. And until the basic human rights are equally guaranteed for all without regards to race, this is a war, yeah. But until that day, the dream of lasting peace, world citizenship, and the rule of international morality, yeah, will remain but a fleeting illusion to be pursued, but never obtained. Well, everywhere is war. Me say war. War in the east, war in the west, war up north, war down south. Yeah, this is a war, and rumors of war. And until the noble and unhappy regime that holds our brothers in South Africa, subhuman bondage, have been toppled, utterly destroyed, war everywhere is, everywhere, 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 everywhere. Here Bob Marley is advocating for peace in his opening line, saying that injustice must be abolished and permanently destroyed for peace to reign. There are no illusions here. This song was heard all over the world. No war anywhere. Like artists you will hear from tonight, we must fight against injustice. In this way, we will be advocating for lasting peace. Thank you for listening. Thank you for fighting. Thank you.
We're going to get the stage set up for the panel discussion in just a moment, so please bear with us there. Okay, thank you, everybody. Charles really beautifully set the stage for our discussion that we're going to have about war, its impact, and the art that flourishes from it and in spite of it. I'm first going to introduce the panelists, and we'll have a few short videos, which I'll talk about in a moment. And then following the panel discussion, we will have a performance by Frank Waln and a performance by Heather Raffo. Oh, I think our mics were communicating with each other. Okay. First, I'll introduce Heather Raffo. She's an award-winning playwright and actress whose work has taken her from the Kennedy Center to the U.S. Islamic World Forum and from London's House of Lords to stages nationally and internationally. An American with Iraqi roots, Raffo's plays have been championed by The New Yorker as an example of how art can remake the world, and have helped forge a whole new genre of Middle Eastern American theater. She's the author and performer of Noura, 9 Parts of Desire, and the opera Fallujah. Her newly released anthology, Heather Raffo's Iraq Plays, The Things That Can't Be Said, brings together Raffo's groundbreaking contribution not only to the American theater, but gives voice to changing cultural and national identities in the decades since 9/11. And we will have a performance from her following the panel discussion. Next is Frank Waln, an award-winning Lakota music artist, public speaker, curator, and writer from the Rosebud Reservation in South Dakota. Described as a masterclass in understanding the world from the viewpoint of Native America, Frank Waln's powerful presentations and performances improve our understanding of our collective history and bring to light cultural strengths we can build to create a more just world. As a self-managed artist and small business owner, Frank Waln utilizes this independent record label that he founded, FDW Entertainment, to release award-winning music which has garnered millions of views, streams, and shares throughout the world. As a curator, Frank Waln has worked with the Field Museum in Chicago to co-curate a music interactive space in their new Native American exhibition hall, which will tell the story of how Lakota culture and Frank's home community continually influence his work. Frank Waln's music is available on all streaming platforms. I'm also going to introduce Dr. Ahmad Sarmast, who was supposed to be with us virtually, but was called away to some really important meetings. So I'm going to introduce him, and then we're going to view a video that he made about the work he does, because I think it's really important that we include the work that he does in our space tonight, even if he can't be with us. He is the founder and director of Afghanistan National Institute of Music, which offers music education in Afghan and Western classical music to students regardless of gender, ethnicity, or social backgrounds. A musician and a member of a renowned musical family, he fled his country in the 1990s, only returning when the nation was liberated from Taliban rule. Dr. Sarmast and ANIM are winners of the 2018 Polar Prize. He has also been named Honorary Fellow of the Royal College of Music London and has received other international honors. Dr. Sarmast received his PhD in music from Monash University in 2005 and a Bachelor and Master of Arts from the Moscow State Conservatory. So we're going to see a short video about his work, and then I'll introduce our final panelists.
The idea of the establishment of the Zora Orchestra is linked by LMM students Mina, a trumpet player. Originally, the Zora Orchestra was not supposed to be as big as it's today.
Yeah, do, say, yeah, do.
It was the idea that Mina put forward was forming a pop group of 4 to 5 girls, can't remember exactly the number. And when this small ensemble has been established and an AANM faculty began supervising and arranging music for this small ensemble, then the interest began to grow up in AANM to form an all-women orchestra.
نام من مینا است، 16 سال هستم، چلو می نوازم، دلربا می نوازم، رشته افغانی است، علی موسیقی افغانی است و کمپوزر هستم. بخاطر چون فکر میکنم که امرای موسیقی من میتونم چیزایی را بگویم که نمیشه با حرفایی که گپ میزنیم با او بگویم، چون که احساس میکنم موسیقی چیز است که بدون حرف زدن تمام چیزا بیان میکنه. و من میخوایم که موسیقی ما ادامه بتم و درس خود بیرون از کشور ادامه بتم، مثلا بعد از این مکتب یا را بیرون از کشور ادامه بتم و وقتی که تمام درسایم خلاص شد پس بیایم افغانستان و موسیقی را درس بتم و مراکز موسیقی در افغانستان جور کنم. قسمی که میفهمم فقط در افغانستان یک مکتب موسیقی است و مثلا زیاد شاگرد نداره. مثلا میشه که یک مراکز دیگر جور کنم که مثلا موسیقی درس بتن، هنر درس بتن.
And then the faculty of AANM, Allegra Bogus, came to me and said, Dr. Sarmast, now there's more and more girls are coming and want to join this ensemble. What we should do? And I said, listen, that's a good blessing for the girls if there's such a big interest. Let's form something only for them. Let's form all-women ensemble orchestra of Afghanistan. That will be sending a very strong message to the community about the ability of the girls when they're given an opportunity.
Yeah.
Soon after the introduction of Zora Orchestra to the community, a huge interest has been generated in hosting, writing, making stories about Zora Orchestra. And the media coverage that Zora received opened also many windows of opportunity for their national and international performances.
بله، نام زرین مجیدی است. صف نوزده مکتب موسیقی افغانستان هستم. آله موسیقی من در اصل وقتی که موسیقی نوازم احساس میکنم که زندگی واقعی را احساس میکنم. یعنی موسیقی نواختن بر من یعنی جز از زندگی است موسیقی نواختن. و آله موسیقی که من نوازم صداش خوش دارم. وقتی که نوازم یعنی لذت میبرم از صدای موسیقی. خب هدف اصلی من خواهیست که یک نواز خوب شوم، یعنی پروفشنال، و بعد از او میخوایم که در افغانستان به دخترایی که از موسیقی یا از درس محروم هستن برام درس بکنم و این کارا.
After the announcement of the US forces being withdrawing from Afghanistan, students were in the school holidays and they will be just returning here. But of course, many students were coming to practice in school on a daily basis.
1, 2, 3.
Just not missing the rehearsal and keep going and continuing coming to the school in spite of all the danger that's happening around. It clearly shows that the students, not only in Anim, but generally the youth of Afghanistan, are very resilient and very hopeful for the future.
من در هوا می‌بینم چون که هنوز طالبان میاید نمیاید در کل نیمه در هوا می‌بینم یعنی معلوم نیست. زندگی موسیقی برای معنی نداره. یعنی موسیقی نباشه زندگی هیچ ترس نیست که حال موسیقی از دست بگیره.
شاید دشوار باشه ولی آینده بسیار خوبه به افغانستان میبینم، چون که میفهم 100% مطمئن هستم که من میتونم افغانستان و زنای افغانستان کمک کنم، خصوصا دختر مثلا زیاد دختر خرد که هست در دیگه ولایت‌ها موقعی پیدا نمیکنن که مکتب یا برن میگم در آیندهشان کمک کنم.
The security is a big issue, especially for educational entities of Afghanistan, given the latest attacks against the educational centers. And just last week, we witnessed a very savage and barbaric attack against the innocent schoolgirls in Dasht-e-Barchi in Said al-Shuhada school, which from my perspective, it is a crime against humanity. It's a war crime. It's a genocide. Girls are getting deprived from their educational rights. People are slashed publicly for nothing practically, for listening to music or watching a movie or sometimes being caught with a telephone.
بر من این معنا رو میده که افغانستان پس شاید به اون سالهای پیش بره سعیست و قدر نمیره ولی میره. یعنی دختر باید حجابش درست باشه. فکر میکنم اون یک چیز وزارت زنان وجود نداشته باشه. اون یک چیز گفتن فکر میکنم و موسیقی و دخترها خب شاید اصلا نباشه.
Afghan kids, especially Anim students, they are very hopeful for the future, but their hope is in a way mixed with some concern, given the past policies of the Taliban, but also the current practices of the Taliban in the areas which is under their control. But of course, I totally for a dignifying peace for Afghanistan. This country was in war for so many years. Peace and the return of peace, it is one of the dreams of this nation.
موسیقی اگه نباشه هیچ کس زنده نمیمونه. تو موسیقی روح روان یک انسانه. موسیقی میتونه که مثلا خوش بسازه و میتونه امروز موسیقی درد کشور تا به کشورهای دیگه شان بدی. درد که واقعا مثلا به اینجا هست تا به دیگه کشورها شان.
Thank Dr. Sarmast for his important work, and we wish he could be here with us tonight, but we understand that he was not able to. Our final panelist is Iryna Kanishcheva, is the founder and curator of several groundbreaking public art projects in the USA and her home country, Ukraine. Among them is the first urban arts initiative in North Central Florida, 352 Walls. She is the founder of Monochronicle, an arts service organization and software dedicated to equitable solutions and public art industry development. Iryna is the recipient of the 2021 Business Arts Award and the 2015 Public Art Award and the 2018 City Beautification Award. Iryna was published in Springer Scientific Journal, featured in Innovate Gainesville book, and has contributed to numerous publications from the most relevant street art galleries on the web and in magazines such as Street Art United States, Instagraffiti, Brooklyn Street Art, Graffiti Street, Urbanite, Street Art News, Graffiti Artwork Magazine, and Stewart Urban Art Magazine, among others. We're going to watch a very short video about her work, and then we will launch right into our discussion.
Thank you.
Yeah, oh, slides. Do you have the slides? Oh, there we go. Okay.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Not many people know, but originally I'm a pharmacist and used to work as a field sales manager for a Russian pharmaceutical company when living in Ukraine. I changed my focus in the career when I moved in the States, following my dream and passion to street art. I started my own company in 2018 as a mural production, and today we are a public art platform that provides services for both art administrators and artists in producing both sculptures, murals, or other art installations. Can we switch some slides?
Oh, you want
Just go to the next one.
Can we go to the next slide?
So here, one before. The war in Ukraine started in 2014, and maybe not many people know about it. They think it started this year, but this year Russians just started bombing Ukraine heavily. Yes, and because if just a few soldiers die a day, there is no need to cover it in the media. Russians never would name it a war. Actually, they would always name it like a protection of Russian population in Ukraine. That's how they explain the Russian troops being on the territory. They would name it a special operation anyhow, but not a war. And people soon started to forget what's going on. That's why we decided to run a public art program. and painted 50 murals from 6 to 26 stories tall to raise awareness and bring attention back to Ukraine, explaining them that the war is still going on. Some of those artworks have a political meaning, like ballerina dancing on the bomb is called instability, that reflects the situation and how fragile we are. Next slide, please. One of the artworks we created in Chernobyl to commemorate the 30th anniversary of the worst nuclear disaster. I believe that public art has the power of delivering a message, and this is the opportunity to remind people what's important. Here you can see a mural based on an image taken by a photographer, Ukrainian photographer Igor Kostin. He took images within hours after the explosion. This mural is actually right inside of the power plant. Next slide, please. And this mural is in Avdiivka. It's east of Ukraine, one of the hottest spots, especially nowadays. You can see signs from bullets. And the woman that we painted here is a local teacher. She lives there, she teaches, and it may seem weird. The war is there, but people still live there. They go to school, they work, and the life's still going on for them. And as the artist explained, he believes in the both sides of the conflict. You know, Russians and Ukrainians, they both suffer from it. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. This artwork attracted a lot of attention in the media. Many major street art blogs or just news covered this because it's a very restricted area, and we only were able to paint this mural having assistance of the Ukrainian Ministry of Information Policy. That's why we decided this year to paint another mural to remind people about this conflict. Can we have next slide, please? And one more, yes. So this artwork was created in Gainesville, Florida, fairly recently, a few months ago. And I worked with Jaber Ferrell on this because of his political scope of work and because he is a famous artist. And once we have artists publishing their artworks on social media who have so many followers, we get people's attention. So the mural itself, of course, cannot change anything. But we were able to raise some funds and send them directly to Ukrainians. They got some helmets, shoes for soldiers, and we were able to contribute to repair of damaged houses this way. We had a celebration at the mural, treating people with borscht and vodka just to give them a feel of the Ukrainian culture and having this as an opportunity to tell more about what's going on. We have a documentary about this event, and in the next slide, we'll try to show you a teaser of that.
So I think the question posed at the end of that video, can art help fight a war, is a good place to start for the panel. So I think I'll start over with Frank, not to put you on the spot, but however you interpret that, and we heard from Charles, you know, all the different definitions of war that we're working with, so feel free to respond in any way that's appropriate for you.
Yes, definitely. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for sharing. I'll say that my understanding of war and the role that art plays in war is rooted in my perspective as an indigenous person and rooted in me having to survive a genocide, that happened on this country. And what we understand as the Indian Wars, when the US government was colonizing land heavily and committing genocide amongst indigenous people in this country, 99.8% of indigenous people on this continent were lost during that war, were murdered. And for me, I think war is like a big umbrella term, and each perspective is different. And for Native people, I say we've been at war with the US government since its inception because they've been colonizing this land and they needed to exterminate us to have claim over this land. And once what white history calls the Indian Wars ended, and then they begin like the reservation system, the war never really ended. It just adapted and kind of became more accepted forms of colonialism. Even up until this day, things like pipelines endangering our water supply. That war has never ended. And whenever we were placed on reservations in the early 1900s, the war also shifted, and it took place within the laws that the US government put on Native people. One of them being in 1884, the US government outlawed all Native American cultures, but they called it our religion. So that was our songs, our dances, our entire social way of being became illegal under US law. So, after we were being slaughtered by the US Army and the US government, they then moved the war to more socioeconomic means, and political means to try to exterminate us, erase us. And within that, I think that art is absolutely necessary to human survival. I'm a musician, so I'll just take music as an example. But in any human struggle against colonialism, oppression, or war, music and art is always present. And I kind of nerd out on this because I studied audio engineering and I learned a lot about how the human brain perceives sound and how the ear works. And for music anyway, once our ear takes those sound waves and translates it into signals, little is understood about how our brain translates those signals into everything we know as sound, language, music, everything. So I think that expressing oneself through music or any form of art is a very natural human thing. And whenever we are put in times of oppression, times of war, I think human beings, there's a quote by a famous Native poet, John Trudell, and he said that human beings, we don't stop surviving even when we want to. We don't stop being human even when we are being dehumanized by war, by colonialism. And I think within that, art and music, particularly because I'm a musician, is medicine. And within war, there's a lot of physical sickness, there's a lot of spiritual and emotional sickness, and I think art can provide a medicine to help you survive and circumvent all of that, and also flip the perspective on whatever topic. Like a lot of my music, and you will see when I perform, I'll take something that American people, just take for granted, and I'll reframe it through my art, through my music. I'll reframe that perspective and kind of show you how I look at it as a Native person. And I think that art is a great tool to do that, to reframe perspectives and to, I think bring us all back to our humanity at the end of the day. Art brings us back to our humanity.
Thank you, Frank. Heather, I'll ask the same question to you, if art can help fight a war.
Really riffing off Frank's, yes, and I love how deeply he spoke to art as an act of resistance. I think that what I find so interesting about that phrase is that we're using the word fight to begin with, right? And then it just takes my brain down that road is, do I make my art to fight in the first place? Like, am I part of the battle? And I think sometimes I am. I agree, like there is this resistance element to it. I also, I think that making art in any time of war is an act of hope, right? It's automatically saying that something can change, the status quo can change. Where there's hope in my work is the fact that I did it in the first place. And I think I did it as a theater artist, making plays about Iraq during the war between America and Iraq. It was because I was making them here in this country, and I so believed in my fellow countrymen and women that if they could only hear stories from humanizing Iraqis, they would respond with an open heart, right? And it's a huge act of hope that I even thought that was possible. So that's where I started. And for the most part, that was like 2 decades of my art-making life, was living that, pursuing that in communities across the country. And I think I'm in a very different place now, where I think that, not that I don't have hope, that kind of different, but I'm looking at art more like medicine. I'm really navigating spaces for grief and ritual. And I think that the theater and many art practices are places of ritual. And I'm navigating, now that we're kind of 30 years past the first Iraq War and 20 years past the second Iraq War, I'm really looking at the costs and the kind of ongoing costs on both Iraqis and Americans, psychological costs, and saying, where are our rituals for healing? You know, we've just, let's say we're coming out of the 2 years of COVID, right? There's a lot of national grief that isn't being spoken to. We have yet to have a national mourning or ritual as a rite of passage. So this is where I'm questioning how my art sits in relationship to war and the ongoing costs of it. So I think a lot about the word sacrament, because sacrament, for me, honors that sense of ritual, and that we all need to kind of go through some sort of rite of passage. And while we may be doing that in our own personal spiritual lives, I'm looking at it kind of nationally. How do we speak to that?
Thank you, Heather. Iryna, I suppose you proposed the question, so if you would like to address it for us.
It's basically my tool to fight the war is public art. And it's not only by sending people money and buying this protective clothes or something, it's about saving the moment in the history. Because when the war starts, people talk about it everywhere, but then they start to forget. And having this experience, 8 years experience in Ukraine, I already knew that people will not talk about Ukraine very soon. So I decided to paint at least a mural. I selected a very visible location in downtown Gainesville, Florida, where people often walk and see, so they could at least talk about it. And thank you, Frank. I feel like you are a good fighter. You try to protect, the culture and save it in history your way, as well as you too. Thank you.
Thank you, Iryna. So I think everybody's been talking about the temporality of war. War is coming, war is here, and then war is over. And as you're saying, Iryna, sometimes people stop talking about the war even as it's going on. And war has very direct effects on art, as we saw with Dr. Sarnast's case, you know, pick up and move operations for the music. And some of the people in the film were saying, can I even be human without music? And so war and its effects on art can be quite immediate. So what are some of the ways then that either art that you've created that you hope it does outlast either people forgetting about the war or even outlasts the negative impacts of the war, which continue for centuries in some case? And we can send that to, we'll start with Iryna on that one.
Hello, yeah. So I wanted to bring an example of Black Lives Matter movement. When this conflict happened, many public artworks were vandalized, you know. I remember this beautiful sculpture with the hands, originally just a metal sculpture, but someone just threw the red paint over it, making like a context to it. And I feel like we could share more ideas on what's really going on, what people really feel, you know, by creating meaningful artworks.
Thank you. Frank?
Yeah, for me as a native music artist, I think, you know, of course the art we create will outlast us. My music will be here after I'm gone, but more than that, I think artists such as ourselves leave a lasting impact in the space that we create as artists and kind of the lanes we create for artists to come after us to, you know, talk about the same things we're talking about, but enhance it, elevate it, and do it bigger and better. And I say that as a native artist who had to found my own record label, my own publishing company, had to build my own home studio, teach myself how to produce and record music just to create recorded music. Because, you know, native people are so erased in American culture that you also don't see as in popular media, but that's also calculated and for a reason. It's part of that erasure of indigenous people in our history so that people don't think about the fact that this country we're sitting in is an illegal settler colony that was founded by illegal means. You know, they didn't even follow their own laws whenever they colonized this land, the US government being they. And so I had to work very hard, and fortunately I had the internet. So that was the other thing, is the internet gave me a tool and a ton of other native artists to put our art out to the world so that we didn't have to go through the colonial gatekeepers which were silencing our voice. We could just put it out there to the world. And you know, the world is hungry for that history. Indigenous history is US history. So just the fact that I had to work so hard just to even be a native artist in settler colonial United States, I know will, you know, create an impact in that there will be native artists after me that will bring more awareness, create a bigger splash. You know, I do a lot of presentations for native youth, and I always tell them that, you know, my generation, we are the thunder, but these coming generations are the real storm. I feel like, you know, for indigenous people anyway, I can't speak for anyone else, but just, you know, the type of artists that we are, I feel like create space for change and for a different, new, unique perspective.
Thank you, Frank. Yeah. And, you know, Heather, you mentioned this idea of grief and healing, or at least recognizing the moments that we're in. How do you use your art to work through those, either for yourself or for your community? Well, how is your art seen as a healing process if we're in these moments, or, you know, previous moments?
Yeah, I mean, it's all process, really. So I think I start with where I'm at personally and what the questions are, and continue to ask those questions of my community, and then take it further and go into communities very different from my own and ask the same question and see where they're different and where they're similar. I think that one thing that's lucky about the theater is the theater is quite a ritualistic experience to begin with. I mean, it's live. You go into this, you know, kind of sacred, darkened space, right? In a communal way, and sit next to people that might be strangers and experience something. So, but really, what I'm looking at is trying to unearth the kinds of truths that people will say in private that they're really not comfortable saying in public. And then seeing how comfortable I can get people to be with it in public, and seeing if there's not some kind of greater threshold that then gets crossed because it's public, right? And sometimes that's just the act of saying something, literally of just speaking it, right? And sometimes that's the act of an audience seeing themselves on stage for the first time, them seeing their own community represented for the first time, right? I had a lot of Iraqis see 9 Parts of Desire and say, I could never have imagined Iraqi on a national stage in the United States, saying the things you're saying that you would literally be killed for if you said them in Iraq. That kind, but I think that really deeper than all those things, it's approaching, I'm always approaching it with love. There's a lot of kindness and tenderness in my resistance, so that I can disarm entirely both the audience and myself, and see what can come from creating an actual state of vulnerability for what's happening in the art making, but also for the audience to experience something.
And there's certainly not enough love in the world, so we appreciate that. Yeah. So we're going to wrap up in a minute here so we can get to the performances, but I want to ask Iryna a question too. Heather just talked about, speaking these things into public and having people hear them and deal with them. Public art, street art is that way. So if you could talk a little bit about both that expressive form of putting something on a giant building that many people will see and what that means for what's being said, but also the restrictions, because I know I've watched videos where you're speaking and saying that people can come and paint over it if they don't like it, or maybe certain walls aren't accessible to be painted on in the first place. So just speaking about this idea of using a public space to bring things into the world that people might not have other ways of expressing or engaging with.
Hello.
There you go.
Thank you for this question. I really like it because, this project in Ukraine is one of my favorite because we didn't really have restriction on the topic. Nobody told us what to paint, and this is what artists really liked. We just said, okay, here is a war going on in Ukraine. You have a big wall. You have paint. Do whatever you want, except for, of course, like something really, really inappropriate. But many artists were happy to do this. They didn't have a lot of money for this project, but they wanted to express their ideas. And I feel like giving artists creative freedom is very much important. Speaking of restrictions, I often see or manage this call to artists that impose artists what to create, see life, or something very much safe. To avoid any controversy, conflicts from the administrative perspective. But it's not what artists really want to express. It's not what's really going on in this vandalism over sculptures, over something that was created by our administrators as they think people should like. But apparently, it's not what people want to see there. So answering your question, I would say that giving artists creative freedom is not necessarily bad. You can always paint mural over in a few years, right, and expressing another idea, but it's a way for people to talk. And in Ukraine, sometimes people say, why did you spend money painting those murals while you can just send them to the army or spend it somehow differently? But, people had something to talk about. They need art because they don't always want to talk about war, about all the sadness, and they want to say, oh, I don't like it, they should have done something else. And then there is another person says, oh, it's cool, so they have something else to talk.
Thank you. So final thoughts from each person I'll ask. We've talked a lot about war this evening, but I would like to bring peace into the forum. And if you could talk about how you see art, either in general or your art specifically, bringing peace either to yourself, to your community, or to the world. And so I'll start with you, Frank.
Definitely check. Okay, so you'll see whenever I perform here shortly, but a lot of my music is heavily influenced by my culture and things that I learned from my culture as a Lakota person. And I tried to get people to understand that, you know, Native people have been living on this continent, North America, for hundreds of thousands of years, and we understood how to live on this land and be in balance with it. And a lot of native cultures and native worldviews boil down to just being a good human being, being a good relative, not just to other humans, but to the land we live on, to the air we breathe, to the plants, to the animals. And so I think on that notion of peace, I think my art helps everyone, whether you're native or not, be a better human being.
Thank you. Heather, same question about peace.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm a kid born of an Iraqi father and a American mother, right? That was, you know, her roots were German and Irish. So I think I grew up naturally situated in the middle of something, in the middle of a profoundly loving relationship, right? They were married 53 years. So I think peace to me was a given. It was just that it's not only peaceful, it's essential, it's loving. It's the more we're mixing and curious across our boundaries, for lack of a better word, right? So I think that's my approach to the kind of curiosity I give people that I don't understand. And it's hopefully the same curiosity they give me back. And I think back to this issue of vulnerability, I think I've probably used that as a peace offering, right? Like it's my, I think you could generalize and say an actor's tool is vulnerability, right? Their instrument is their heart and their flesh, right? So I'll put myself out in a pretty vulnerable way in my art and as a peace offering, as a, hey, it could be this, right? And allow people, and I think that's very peaceful. It's radical, obviously, but it's peaceful. So I think that's how I approach what I think is a natural human instinct for curiosity and love if the circumstances are right.
Wonderful, thank you. Iryna, your thoughts on peace and your art or art in general?
Sorry, I didn't get it.
So your thoughts on peace, you know, how does your art bring peace to you or your community or the world?
Well, you know, I'm here in America, but I have friends in Ukraine and my family is in Ukraine. And by creating artworks here, I show them my support, my belief, and encourage them to fight, you know, and I believe the peace will come. So I think, again, art has a power of expression, and I would be just grateful for the opportunity to create more artworks to express that.
Thank you so much. I want to thank our panelists again, and I want to thank Charles Ferrell again for leading us off with a wonderful keynote. So we're going to prepare now for our two performances, and we'll have first from Heather Raffo. So give us a minute to prep for that, right? Thank you.
Hi, so I'm going to read a few pieces today from the play 9 Parts of Desire that I wrote. It was written in 2003 and has been performed on and off over the last 20 years. So given something that we were talking about as far as one of the way art helps fight the war is preserving historical memory, right? Especially in times where that historical memory can be lost. So much of the original piece that was written in 2003 are now stories that contain that kind of historical memory. But during 2020, I had an opportunity to adapt the play for film. And in the process of that adaptation, I decided I wanted to rewrite one of the characters, and it was the Iraqi-American character. And the reason I wanted to rewrite her was because I wanted to reframe and situate all those stories of the Iraqi women in their historical memories from the first Iraq War to the second, in a new context for an American audience finally dealing with their own massive sense of grief and loss as a nation and questioning this, why have we not mourned together? So I just wanted to read that for you today because it's very fresh and it's new, and that felt a little more exciting to try. They were digging through mass graves with their bare hands. And one guy on TV, I saw him, he found a pack of cigarettes. He said, "My brother smoked this kind of cigarette, so this is my brother's body." He took the bones with him so he could bury them, what he thought was his brother. I've never seen men cry like that. I watched my dad try not to cry, because when he watched TV and all the green nighttime footage of bombs, he could recognize the street and the neighborhoods where all his family lived. I watched TV looking for faces of our family. All I did was cry, but my daddy wouldn't, so he ended up choking and making himself sick. I mean, he lived here in the US for 55 years. He played golf 5 times a week. He was just sad, but contained, because you can't watch it on TV. I was on my knees usually in the middle of my apartment with my mom on the phone watching, holding a rosary, watching the news. I wanted to pray, but I didn't have words, so I said my family's names out loud, over and over. Sarta, Zuhair, Zuhaira, Banam, Ramziya. Trying to see them alive, because we didn't know anything. I mean, we couldn't call, we couldn't get through on the phones. A police station. My Uncle Sarta lived in Baghdad next to a police station. Uncle Zuhair next to the airport. Amal Huda next to the Palestine Hotel. Amal Zuhaira in Karada, Mount Lebanon. My cousin Maysoon, she used to work for the UN. The whole face got blown off it. I read it on the bus. They never forget, ever. They carry everything with them, everything. They're so attached, like great-grandparents, parents, children. It lives in them. It walks with them. They don't let go of anything. They hold it all inside them. But the year ISIS took Mosul, dementia took my dad. He spent 80 years carrying and 6 years forgetting. But the few times he cried, it was lifetimes. I never saw anything like it. When Dad went into the hospital, the whole country was under lockdown. I threw my kids in a rental to drive across the country because I was afraid to drive to Michigan with New York license plates. I was coming from the epicenter and our country was at war. On the drive, my brother kept calling, saying we didn't have long the way Dad was breathing. I knew I wouldn't be allowed inside the hospital coming from New York. I knew I couldn't rush to his side. I couldn't touch. I couldn't hold. So I stood outside Dad's window for 2 days watching him pass. A man of few words. I watched Dad all my life. Everything I knew about Dad, I knew from watching. I knew he was from Michigan as much as he was from Mosul. I knew he wanted this place. He wanted this life. The golfing, the green, the water, the sky, until he got lost driving home from the store. First they said it was dementia, but then they said Alzheimer's. I said, what if it's violence? What if? Because before he lost memories and language, he lost brothers and sisters and neighborhoods and root systems that had been in place for thousands of years. My family waited decades for things to get better. They waited through revolutions and coups and shock and awe and 3 wars and unemployment, but when neighbor turned against neighbor, even my family fractured. One cousin left for a job and another for school. Some escaped in the bottom of boats. Then they waited years as refugees. Others married locals, worked fast food until they could practice as doctors again. They planted gardens in Germany, New Zealand, survived hurricanes in Houston, went anywhere they were offered a spot to survive: Australia, France, San Diego, Boston, Tampa, Detroit. We were from Iraq for thousands of years. We scattered in less than 10. Now I can never go home again and sit in my Amma's kitchen and say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We just keep going. And the war, that was a mistake, don't you think? I mean, I don't even know. Like what? Hundreds of thousands. How many Iraqis dead? And a woman, she actually turned to me and said that. She said, the war was a mistake. She was getting a pedicure. I was getting a fucking pedicure. I want my country to stop because now another Iraqi is dead. Baba. Oh, Baba. That veteran, too, who moved in 2 doors down on our quiet street in middle-class Michigan. On the same street you lived, Dad, longer than you lived anywhere in the world, where you made your garden, raised your kids, mowed your lawn, then drank your beer, where you knew your neighbors for 55 years. The veteran moved in like you, looking to make roots. But he ended up on a rampage near the river, and police came saying, lock the doors, try to hide. I think. Did he know your accent? Did he recognize your face? But mostly, I think something simpler is true. I think the war made him lose his mind, just like you. Thanks. I'm going to read one more. This one is in the spirit of love. I chose this monologue. I see with my heart, not with my eyes. I am Bedouin. I cannot tell you if a man is fat or if a man is handsome. Only I can tell you I love this man or not. I think you see with your heart like a Bedouin. I do, I feel this void. I have no peace. Always I look for peace. Do you know peace? I think only men have real peace. Woman, she cannot have peace. My mother, when I am a girl, I come home, she is so happy to sing to me, see me, she sing to me. She sing, Amal, my beautiful girl. Amal, whose hair is black like night. Amal, whose eyes are black like deep coal. Amal, my daughter, whose body is strong for her love, and my voice I have to sing to my mother, I am home again. But never, never I think I'm different. We in our village, we believe our mother. I have 5 brothers and 6 sisters, but never I think I am different. Oh, sorry. And my voice, I have to sing to my mother, I am home again. But never, see, never I think I am different. We in our village believe our mother. I have 9 brothers and 5 sisters, and nobody make me feel fat. But I learn now I am big. Hey, so don't you think I'm fat? I am. But I am fat, and my children too. They are diet now. I have 2 children. They are 14 and 8. My husband, the first husband, he was Saudi. He is now in London on this big road, they call it, where all the famous plastic surgeons are. I was there with him. I like London very much. I study there. I left him. I was feeding my daughter Tala at the time and driving my son Omar to school, but I forgot papers for Omar, so I drove back home to get them. I saw my husband in bed with my very, very close friend. And really, I am shocked because he is Bedouin, but Saudi Bedouin. And even he said to me, during our relation, he said, don't say these things, they are dirty things. I want to enjoy myself with him, but he. So I didn't say anything. I told my friend, go into my house, get my passport and the children's passport, and I left. I never told him why I left. I came back to Iraq. I didn't like to live in our town. It's too small. No, I don't feel free even. Always my brothers, they're looking out for me. I feel too much closed, so I come. No, not here. I went to Israel first. You see, our tribesman came to visit because my father, he is the sheikh. This tribesman, he is from the same Bedouin tribe as me, but born Israeli. And always when I am a girl, I think to marry one from my tribe. We have the same eyes, same accent, same nature. It's a very big heart. This Bedouin man, he never feels the woman his enemy. No, he feels sorry for her. He only keep her happy. And the woman, she feels him very man. We are very special together, so I marry him. It's my second marriage. I went to his village in Israel. He promised me we would move, we go to Europe somewhere or Canada, but we never move. His wife didn't want. It's his other wife, number 1, she make him stay. He would have taken both of us. It could have been good, but number 1, she was crazy. Really, they fight a lot. Number 1, she would leave to go to her father's house for 6 months at a time, and I am taking care of all of her 8 children. I mother one of her children. I fed her son. It's Quran. You must know, if you feed more than 7 days, the full feeding, the child's like your child. And this child can never marry with your child because now they are brother and sister in the milk. Because they have your blood inside them both. Number 1, she was very skinny, not well. She goes away for such a long time. We couldn't live together like this. He is a very jealousy man, very Bedouin. I'm looking for the freedom. Him says, no, we're not going to Canada. So I care very much for him, but again, I left. I came back to Iraq with my children, but to Baghdad, to be in the city, I come here, my family, no, they don't support me, but I got some money. I got some money from a friend of my first ex-husband. His friend, his name's Saad. We start to talk on the phone, this friend Saad. He is in London and me here. We talk for 1 year. I am a very honest person. I told him exactly, I am 38. This is how I look. I hide nothing from him. I told him everything in my heart. Everything I hope. I felt peace. It's beautiful to talk so much. He told me from inside himself too, very deep, very sincere for 1 year. I felt safe. The first time in my life, I felt myself with this man. I love him. Oh, we talk, we say we will get married, third marriage. He says, let us meet in Dubai because the war it was then. If he comes back home to Iraq, they may keep him. So I telephone his family, congratulations. He telephoned my family. We meet in this hotel in Dubai. We go to dinner. After dinner, I'm in my hotel room. I call him 2 a.m. He says, no, not now, I am drunk. I said, I want to talk. We spent 1 year on the phone talking everything. Finally, we see each other. My heart's so full to share. He says, no, Amal, no. He says, it's over. Don't talk to me anymore. I'm crying. I don't understand. Him says this thing. Him says, you're too pure for me. What you gonna do with men like me? I'm 20 years older than you, soon I'll be very old man, you have to take care of me. You're too good, too innocent for me. I don't understand. Him says this thing because I love him. Him say no. No, he say, you're not the Amal I love. What's this mean? I'm not the Amal he love. How he says it? Why can this be? I'm ashamed to my family. They think he slept with me that night we meet in Dubai and changed his mind. I don't have peace. Always I ask myself, what he think of me? What he see in me that changed him? I see now I am fat. I look the first time, I dress myself more pretty, do my hair this way. I don't see him fat. I don't see him old. I see him with my heart, not with my eyes. Never have I loved a man this much. Even I love him. Even. My ex-husband, the first one, he got us passports to bring the children to London. They'll see the father on the weekends, have their schooling there. La, I told you this already. Always I'm worried, what if I run into Saad when I go there? I would shake. It's all of me on my face. I don't know I can hide it. I'll have my freedom there, but not my peace. Maybe freedom is the better than peace. I've never talked this before. Nobody here, they don't know this thing about me. I keep it in my heart only. I talk a lot. I wish to be like this. I want to be like you. This most free moment of my life, really, I mean it. Really, I love you. I love you like a sister. I love you. It's the most free moment of my life. Stay with me, don't leave. I want to talk every day this way. Is this American way? Tell me what you think. Just what should I do? I want to memorize what you say so I can be this way, freedom again. But what you think he mean? I am not the Amal he love. Thank you. Thank you.
Check. One more time for Heather. Let's give it up for Heather one more time. Okay, I'm going to do a couple songs here with you all, and I feel really blessed, and it's really special that I'm able to perform this particular piece, this first song I'm about to do for you all, because this first song I'm going to do I actually composed while on a residency at the Arab American National Museum in 2019, and I performed this song for the first time in this room. So I feel pretty special to be able to come back and bring it back. This song I'm about to do for you all was inspired by a trip I took to Palestine in 2017. I went on an artist delegation with an organization out of Florida called the Dream Defenders. They're an organization of black community organizers and artists, and they sent an artist delegation to Palestine for 11 days, and they asked me to join them. And I went not knowing fully what to expect, but with an open heart and an open mind. And what I witnessed was life-changing and transformative in a lot of ways. I feel like I'm still processing a lot of the things I saw in Palestine, particularly as an indigenous person, because I witnessed a colonialism that was shockingly similar to I know what happened to my ancestors here. So much so that when I was moving through Palestine, through different Palestinian cities and communities, it felt like I was on reservations in the United States, just the way they looked, the way it felt. And whenever I came home, I had a lot to process, and I'm grateful that the museum gave me space and time to process it in the form of a residency. And whenever I wrote this song, I was thinking about all of the similarities I saw between Palestine and my people. A lot of similarities in the colonialism and the genocide, but I also saw a lot of similarities in the beautiful things about our cultures, our connection to the land, our music, our language, our food. And so I was very inspired, and I left with a very heavy heart, but also with a sense of hope. And, you know, Heather mentioned it earlier, but that led me to this song, which is called Hope. And I wrote this song and called this song Hope because I learned from that trip that hope is one of the most powerful tools you can have as a human being. I believe that hope is where a lot of strength comes from as a human being. And hope is more than just a noun. I think hope is a verb. You have to like live it. You have to, what do you do to find hope for yourself when times are hopeless? And we live in a country and we live in a time, you know, the pandemic, it seems like there's a lot of hopelessness pervading our communities, and that's very true of my community as well. That hopelessness for Native communities is why Native youth are 10 times more likely than the national average to commit suicide. Suicide is a huge problem in our community, and I myself suffer from that, and it's because of that hopelessness. And so I realized just how powerful hope is. And another thing about this song is the way that I'm going to play my flute and the music that you hear. Again, I'm a music producer, was inspired by all the music I heard in Palestine. And I also set out to write this song in my language, because another thing I'm trying to do, and we talked about art being resistant, art being an answer for war. For me, my music, my art is also a tool to learn my language, because my language was taken from me during that genocide. It became illegal under US law from 1884 to 1978. Some of you in this room were alive when it was illegal for my mother to speak her language and my people to practice our cultures. The Indian Religious Freedom Act passed in 1978, and before that we would get arrested for practicing our cultures. And so my great-grandmother grew up during that time, and she took our language to the grave with her. She never taught anyone in our family. We didn't even know she could speak it until she passed before I was born. But my mom said they didn't know she could speak Lakota until she would get around other elders, other grandmothers. They would have a flea market in our home community, and they would speak Lakota to each other. And I later learned that my great-grandmother, she was a survivor of the Indian boarding school system, where they forcibly took all of the Native children from our families, from our homes, and put them in Catholic boarding schools and abused them and for speaking our language, practicing our cultures. And a lot of those children died. A lot of children did not survive those boarding schools. And you know, there's even accounts of children starving themselves in these schools because they were treated so poorly. And so learning that my great-grandmother survived that, and that's why she felt so ashamed about her language, she never taught it to anyone. It felt like there was a big hole in my heart and my spirit, and I didn't realize it was there. My language was taken from me. And so that led me to where I'm at now, where I use my songwriting and my lyrics to learn my language and also share it with the world and bring it to life. So this first song I'm about to do for you all is called Hope. And again, the first time I ever performed this song was in this room. Teshni Yalo, in the lands of the people of Palestine. From my heart, I will never forget you. Thank you. All right, thank you very much. This last song I'm going to share for you all is a song that I composed on the flute. I play a few instruments, and this is an instrument that really helped me get through a lot of hard times in my life. And when we were watching the video of the students at the music school, and one of the students was talking about her instrument and how, you know, it's like breathing to her, and how it says everything she can't say in words. And I feel like that's what this instrument does for me, and especially this song, because right now we are speaking my colonizer's language. You know, at the end of the day, this is colonized land, and we are speaking the colonizer's language. And sometimes that language doesn't capture what I feel. Sometimes that language doesn't accurately express what I want to express. And that's when I put it into music. And this song I'm about to perform, I think, is also another example or an answer for one of the questions on the panel when, you know, we were asked, how can our art help heal? How can our art help find peace? So in 2020, just before the pandemic hit, I went through a very life-changing traumatic event. And this story is also a tale of how ignorance and colonialism and just lack of understanding is more than just not knowing. It results in people being harmed, and people can even be killed when there's such ignorance in the world. So in 2020, I suffered a seizure, and I was in Chicago, where I live on the south side, and an ambulance was called, and I was taken by ambulance to the University of Chicago Medical Center. And whenever I arrived, again, you know, Chicago is a very segregated city, so that also plays into the sort of resources that the city has. And the poor communities of color do not get good resources and do not get good health care. And the hospital, the doctors, first all assumed that my seizure was induced by me smoking PCP, and they wouldn't believe until my blood test came back negative. And another thing that happened was I woke up while I was intubated with a tube down my throat. They didn't do the sedatives right, and I became conscious. And it was one of the worst experiences of my life, because you can't breathe, you can't talk, and I just started panicking. And so I have a lot of suffocation trauma from that, and that's where playing this instrument helped me reclaim my breath, because whenever you play this instrument, you have to breathe a certain way. But I had such PTSD from that suffocation and waking up with a tube down my throat that I would have nightmares where I couldn't breathe. I would have anxiety attacks where I couldn't breathe. For like almost a whole year, I felt like I didn't have control of my breathing. So that happened. And then this is where the ignorance comes into play. So I have scars on my body that are from a Lakota ceremony that we do, where we offer pieces of our flesh for prayer. It's something we've been doing for thousands of years, long before the United States existed. But it's also one of those things that was made illegal from 1884 to 1978. And the people, the elders that taught me ceremony back home, tell stories about when they were younger doing these ceremonies in secret. They had to do it in hiding, because if the white people, the settlers overseeing our reservation, who are controlling the laws, controlling the police, if they saw us practicing our ceremonies and praying, they would arrest us. and they threw us in jail. And from jail, they would actually send us to insane asylums. And in South Dakota, my home state, if you go down old rural back road South Dakota, you'll see abandoned buildings, giant concrete buildings that say insane asylum for Indians, where they would send my ancestors for doing ceremony. So that happened legally until 1978, till the Indian Religious Freedom Act passed. So in 2020, when I was in that hospital and they saw those scars on my body from that same ceremony, they diagnosed it as self-mutilation, and they were trying to send me to the psych ward. They were trying to send me to the insane asylum for doing ceremony. So even though that law had changed, as a Lakota person doing ceremony, I was still getting the same treatment my ancestors got because of that U.S. law. And luckily, through answering a bunch of questions and discussion, I didn't get sent to the psych ward, but they were trying to send me to the psych ward. And I ended up being hospitalized for a whole week because of all the damage that hospital did to my body. It took me a whole week to recover, not from the seizure, but from the damage that the hospital did to my body because of the way they treated me and because of their ignorance about Native people. And so when I came out of that experience, that was 2 weeks before the pandemic hit, I felt empty, and I felt like my spirit had left my body. Something that my people believe, Lakota people believe, is that we have a very spiritual understanding of our existence, and we believe that we are spirits on this human journey. You are a spirit inhabiting this body. We are a mind, a body, and a spirit, and everything works in tandem. And in times of trauma, your spirit can leave you entirely or in pieces. And I've even learned about psychology that supports this. There's terms now for this PTSD, and the term if you're triggered. If you're triggered about a past trauma, it's almost like you're put in that, you feel the same way you felt when that happened. And the science behind that is, the human brain will do anything to survive. And when we are presented with a reality that our brain can't comprehend, or we don't want to comprehend, it'll kind of freeze it as a snapshot in time and go somewhere else, or just put it away till later time to process because it can't handle it in the moment. And that's what trauma is. And that's what PTSD is. And when you're triggered, it puts you back in those moments. And I believe that's connected to that concept of your spirit leaving your body in times of trauma. And so when I came out of that experience, I felt like my spirit had left me. And Lakota people, we have ceremonies to call your spirit back. We have, different things you can do to call your spirit back. But as a musician, I just had this feeling like I needed to write a song to call my spirit back. Or I needed a personal song to call my spirit back. And when I got home, another thing that happened, so when I woke up when I was intubated, I started panicking and trying to pull my IVs out. I didn't know where I was or what was going on. They had security come in and hold me down, and I felt like I was suffocating and being held down, and they shot me full of sedatives, including a spinal tap. So when I came out of that, my memory was gone. I couldn't even remember my laptop password for like a week. I couldn't even do work. So my memory was completely erased. But when I got home, this song that I'm about ready to play for you all was already there in my brain. It was like it was the only thing that was in my mind. And I've never had this happen where an entire song just came to me in its entirety. Songs for me usually start as little ideas, like little seeds, and then you add, you grow. I've worked on some songs for years, and this song was just there. And that's how I know it was meant to be. And so I wrote this song to call my spirit back. This is the Calling Your Spirit Back song. But this is also for all of us here who've ever experienced trauma, all of the black and brown people who've descended from genocide and hold trauma in our DNA, whether we're aware of it or not. I feel like a lot of what we deal with in America traumatizes us and detaches us from our spirit. And so this is for all of us who've felt our spirits leave entirely or in pieces. And also for all the spirits of our ancestors who survived colonization, slavery, genocide. And so call their spirits home and call their spirits to be here with us, because time and space doesn't exist for spirits. This is the Calling Your Spirit Back song. Thank you. I'm Frank Waln. Thank you very much. Thank you to AANM for having me again, and thank you to everyone who participated in the panel today. Thank you.
All right, well, one more round of applause for Charles and for our panelists and performers. Thank you all for coming. Make sure you check out concertofcolors.com for the rest of this week's wonderful performances and events, and go to arabamericanmuseum.org to see everything we've got coming up. Really appreciate it. Thank you.